Hello, beloved pastors and leaders. I am Pastor João Vito, one of the pastors here at Central and DNA, and I'm very glad to know that you are continuing to move forward in our DNA 2 seminar. If you are here, I hope you have already completed the previous steps. Throughout the entire DNA I seminar, the first 3 steps of the transition were taught, and here in DNA 2, you've already had 2 presentations, one with Pastor Wagner, who opened this seminar and explained how it will work. And now, I hope you have watched Pastor Ana Claudia sharing about the School of Leaders. Maybe when you hear about the School of Leaders, you think that's the next step in the transition. But that's not quite the case. In DNAI, we finished by teaching the first 3 steps, which are personal preparation, intentional preaching, and mobilization for prayer. The 4th step is not the School of Leaders, and I hope you don't get confused. We explained and taught about the School of Leaders because it is a pillar of the cell church, and it couldn't be left out of a practical lecture like this one that I'm sharing with you. But from now on, we're going to get into this step-by-step process. But even though it's not step number 4, everything I want to share involves how to implement a School of Leaders. Well, you will need to have focus. You will need to have passion, vision, love, as the pastor finished sharing. But of course, what I want to teach now has to do with a great secret to success. Pastor, I know it is your desire and your dream that when you start implementing the transition in your church, everyone gets involved, that your entire church is in the small groups. It's a very beautiful dream, but can I be honest? It usually doesn't work out very well. A cell church is not about distributing all the people. I'll use this expression, dividing people into small groups. Everyone thinks, oh, so I'm going to take my church and split them into small groups, and from now on, we have cells. Cells are not like that. Like this, it doesn't work so well. Usually, they just become fellowship groups that end up not growing, not evangelizing, and not fulfilling the mission, as we expected. How to do this? The truth is, brothers, the 4th step of the transition precedes the opening of the School of Leaders. We call it leadership meetings. Leadership meetings. Why hold meetings with the leadership before we start the School of Leaders? It's actually quite simple. If you attract the current leadership of your church, whether they are ministry leaders, people in leadership positions, deacons, elders, it doesn't matter the denomination, but think about the current leadership of your church without the cells. If those who are at the forefront of leadership are with you in the process of implementing the cells, they will make all the difference. Having the leadership of your church leading small groups helps everyone else to get involved soon. But the truth is that the meeting with the leadership is like a filter. It's about bringing close, influential people, those who are more open to changes, so that together we can implement this model. So, the idea is for you to choose and invite people you trust for this process, people who already exercise leadership, people who are close to you, open to change, who have love and commitment to the Lord's work, and who are aligned with you, and with the vision that God has given you. I want to explain this by telling a story. What story? Our testimony here at Central. If you remember everything we've talked about so far, we've shared a bit about what Central is. Back in DNA On, about how we had a strong church, but I want to tell you some details and secrets of this transition process happening in practice. When Pastor Paulo began the transition process at Central, we had a little over 300 members. But to make it easier for you, imagine that we had 300 people. Would it be ideal for all 300 to start? Of course it would. But don't you agree with me that this is a bit far from the practical reality of church life? So what did Paulo do? He carried out a process that up to that point had 4 steps. In the 4th step, he was gathering the leadership. He had already prepared himself, had already preached intentionally, had mobilized the church to pray, and now he was gathering the leadership. Out of those 300 brothers and sisters, he ended up meeting in total with 80 people. How did he hold these meetings? Informally. At the end of services, he would sit with a small group, visit one family, then another, drawing those influential people who held leadership positions at the Central Church closer to him. Brothers and sisters, of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Of course, there were people who didn't want cell groups. I can give you a great example. Right here beside me, there's a book with a bluish cover. You can see it there. It's called Multiplication by Pastor Roberto Botrel. Pastor Roberto Botrel was a beloved pastor. He has since passed away, but he can tell a story about how he was there during our time of transition. He was our youth leader. And to be honest, he didn't want cell groups. Pastor Paulo knew how much he was important. And that's why during this process of meetings with the leadership, he would go to Pastor Roberto and Pastor Simone's house every week, because he needed to bring the youth leadership into the cell group vision. And the two of them, that beloved couple, but stubborn, fighting against the vision, after so much talking with Pastor Paulo, praying and seeking God, they understood that this vision was from God, to the point that he wrote a book called Multiplication related to cell groups. He understood. But it has to do with this process of persuasion. It has to do with bringing the leadership closer. Again, it becomes easier if the leadership is with you. So you are going to select people, Pastor. We filtered 80. And after so many informal meetings, Pastor Paulo scheduled a formal one. He invited those 80 to a gathering, took them to our church retreat site, and there he shared his life story. In this transition process, he said that if on that day the leadership at Central had said no to the cell vision, he would have to take his capits and expression here in Brazil and leave, pack up his things and go. That was not the church he would plant. But he was aware of his calling. He obeyed God, involved the leadership, and gave a beautiful presentation. At the end, he asked, who here is in agreement? What do you all think about everything I've presented? Can I move forward with this process? And the first to raise his hand was a retired pastor from our church at the time. And of course, everyone was waiting and watching to see what he would say. Because if he said, I will, everyone else would say, I will too. If he said, no, you can't, everyone would say, don't do it. He raises his hand and says, Paulo, this is from God, you can go ahead. Brothers, all 80 of them said, it's from God, you can implement the transition. But since this isn't Pastor Paulo's fantasy world, he then asked, so who here is willing to be part of the first class of the school of leaders? Brothers, if this were at your church in a meeting with 80 people, how many would say yes? Someone might say to me, all 80, brother? Let's be real here. Out of the 80, 45 said, I want to. 35 said, you can go ahead, Pastor, but he'd rather watch first. So you realize then that the transition, the implementation, doesn't happen with everyone at once? That's exactly right. From that moment on, 45 would continue the path of transition with Pastor Paulo. And what about the other 255 out of the 300? Nothing has changed for them. So the meeting with the leadership is a filter for who will be part of the first class of the school of leaders. The idea is that those other 255 or however many you have will be part of the second class, the third. But there is a pioneering group. And this pioneering group is made up of people who are open to change by the church leadership who decided to be part of the process together with you. Is that clear? To help you, as with the other steps of the transition, we have prepared a resource kit. In this resource kit, you will find a guidebook, a description of how to do it, what secrets there are, tips for these informal meetings, tips for a formal meeting. In the end, this guidebook will guide you through the transition process. Continuing, the fifth step has arrived, and if the fourth is a filter to bring people to the school of leaders, now indeed the fifth step is the opening of the school of leaders. Pastor, of course, you will open your school with a selected group. It's not for your entire church. So, if you have 100 members, I do not recommend a school with 100 students. Because you won't be able to control attendance, it will be a bit loose. Oh, I'm going to do a general school with all of them. It doesn't work as well. But with a select group, you have greater control. And then I just need to remind you of what Anna already told you. Do you remember? So, what are you going to do with your church's structure? Nothing
Nothing maintained the current structure from the Bible school of your church. Oh, Pastor, here in our country we don't have a school. So it became easier. You will select a few. But if in your church, here in Brazil, it is very common. But in other parts of the world, I know that some countries don't have a Bible school so clearly like this. But if there is already a school running, keep it running. Here you will open a special class. At the Central, we had the famous Sunday Bible School here in Brazil, EBD, and we kept it running. But at the same time, the whole church was having classes. Pastor Paulo was the teacher of a specific class called School of Leaders. So create a course called School of Leaders. I am sure it will be very blessing. In the slide that appeared for you a little while ago, it can be in person or online, but can I give you a secret? Do the first one in person, face to face. Have your leaders with you, how this will bless you. Afterwards, of course, you can implement online schools, which work very well nowadays. But what about afterwards? You will then schedule the start of the classes. These classes have a beginning, middle, and end. Once the school is formed, you will open a cell group, which is the next step. I'll explain shortly. But the secret is maintain the current structure, but create a separate class with this group you selected in the meetings with the leadership. Right after, what do? You will be the first teacher. You cannot delegate this role. The senior pastor is the first teacher of the School of Leaders. The vision was given to you by God, Pastor. So you can't delegate it. Am I going to have someone else teach for me? Of course, in a trip, an emergency, or an exceptional situation, you can ask someone to give a class. But as a rule, choose the schedule in such a way that you teach the class. The first teacher of the Central School of Leaders was Pastor Paulo Mazon. And he wasn't just for the first class, but he was for the second, the third, and the longer you can keep yourself and other pastors of the church teaching the classes about the vision, it will make all the difference in the process. But continuing here with the practical part of it, what comes next are the topics we have chosen. And I will present this in more detail shortly. But the 14 classes that we provide for you, and we already give you this material ready with PowerPoint, workbook, cover the subjects that appear for you now. Purpose, cell vision, evangelism, consolidation and discipleship, and effective leadership. In 14 classes, we delve deeply into these subjects to train leaders who have a clear vision of the kingdom vision, but also of multiplying the kingdom of God in the lives of other people. And how is this going to work? So, in the resource kit we prepared for you, when you are teaching this select group you have chosen, you will find a workbook, which is in Word format, meaning it's an editable material allowing you to remove our branding, add your own, rewrite whatever you want, remove what you wish, or add whatever you desire. But in addition to the workbook, you will find 14 PowerPoint presentations, also editable additional school materials, because we promised some resources and you will find them there. And there will be a step-by-step guide for each school lesson. What would this step-by-step guide be? The step-by-step guide is related to the 6th step of the transition, which is the opening of the first cells. Well, perhaps, Pastor, you started this seminar back at DNA 1, wanting to reach this lecture. Many of you started thinking, I want to open cells. But did you realize that there is a path for this to be done well? Pastor, you cannot skip any steps. You cannot neglect your personal preparation. You cannot neglect intentional preaching. You cannot neglect mobilizing for prayer, getting people to pray for the lost. You cannot neglect the need for a vision after all. No one can serve God without spiritual vision. But of course, you cannot simply think, I already know this. Pastor, what we are teaching here has been tested, not by 1 or 2, not by 12, not by 100, but by thousands and thousands of pastors around the world. And when done step by step, it worked extremely well. So, before opening a cell and having done everything you did in DNA 1, which are the 3 steps I already mentioned, you need, pastor, non-negotiable, to filter, select people, hold meetings with the leadership, and from this group, bring people to the school of leaders. Within your school of leaders, you will open cells. That's right. The cells will start before the school has finished. And I want to explain this very clearly to you now. Our class structure is appearing for you now. Class 1, calling and purpose. Then 3 classes about the cell vision. Then 4 classes about multiplication. It's as if classes 2 to 8 were a single block of cell vision. Here, subdivided into cells and multiplication. Then 3 classes 9, 10, and 11 about evangelism. 2 classes about consolidation and discipleship, classes 12 and 13. And finally, class 14, advanced leadership. Then in your image, colors will appear for each of these classes. I want you to somehow try to memorize these colors because they will help you understand how the school process works along with the opening of the cells. I want to explain to you now how the implementation of the school of leaders will be. Well, behind me here, you will see in this image several colors. These are the colors I asked you to try to memorize a little so you could understand a little better what we are teaching here. So, class 1 called with a purpose. Classes 2, 3, and 4 seals. Classes 5, 6, 7, and 8 about multiplication. Then 3 classes about evangelism. 2 on consolidation and discipleship and 1 on advanced leadership. I will be explaining here to you, but as you know, this material is being translated. It will now switch between me explaining on the screen without any writing and a slide for you to understand better. But when we say that in the Leader School Kit, there is a step-by-step guide for each class, this material is yours, Pastor, as a teacher, so that you can work on some actions with your Leader School group to indeed form the cells. So, in class 1, for example, there will be guidance, Pastor, for you to be able to ask for testimonies from people. Each person will share their testimony, and 3 will present per class throughout the classes as long as you have students. It might be 4 or 5 small presentations for the whole group to get to know each other and for everyone to be open to participating, speaking, and breaking the ice a bit in your training group. But starting from class 2, things begin to change because at the end of class 2, you will have in the step-by-step instructions the information to prepare a snack for the next class. That's why in class 3, in your image below the class, it says snack practice. That's right, you will simulate with the leadership school group the snack of a cell group with everyone. So each person has to bring something. If it were here in Belo Horizonte, one would bring cheese bread, another would bring soda. If we're talking about another part of Brazil, there are other typical snacks, and in other parts of the world, it's a whole different story. But each person will be responsible. One for the drink, another for the snack, for the savory food, another for some dessert, ice cream, something. But everyone goes together. There is a time of fellowship inside the classroom, and it is a simulation of a snack in a cell group. Meanwhile, you are working on the leadership school. So, called with a purpose. Then the cell church in lesson 2, a lesson based on the cell vision, the biblical foundations of the cell church, and in the cell meeting, which is lesson 3, where we explain what a meeting is like, what is included in a meeting. One of the items is the snack, and you will simulate it inside the classroom. Lesson 4 deals with the topic of goals. We are preparing this topic to work with the students the multiplication that will come from lesson 5. And in this topic, of goals, there are also 2 things written for you. Below, practice worship. So a moment of the lesson must include a time of worship. You are reading there 14 days of fasting and prayer. These 14 days should not be done just for the whole church. It should be done only with the students of the leadership school. It's only for those involved in this group. You will fast for 2 weeks. Pray together so that this vision succeeds, so that the implementation is a success, and so that we don't have errors in the process. Well, then comes the time for multiplication. And here, I need you to understand well. In lesson 5, we are talking about cell multiplication, the types of multiplication. But look below at this important secret: formation of groups of 3 to 4 people. I want to explain to you what this is. These small groups of 3 or 4 people are your future cells, Pastor. Here at Central, we started, remember, with 45 people in this school. When we finished, we opened 15 cells. In 2001, we started 15 cells. Do you know how many people were in each one? 30. 15 times 3 are the 45 who are in the School of Leaders. The 3 are the 45 who are in the School of Leaders. That's how it was with us. In other words, it's in lesson 5 that you will prepare your group to start working together in small groups. How to form these groups. All the material guides you on this, but basically, you will follow the life stage, age group, groups that are better, identified with each other regarding everyday matters. You can't put a teenager together with an adult and, an elderly person. No. The elderly stay together, the adults together, the young people together, the teenagers together, of course. For the language to be better and easier, not only among them, but also to win over the people in their relationships to Jesus. But then it's here in lesson 5. And from there, they work together. In lesson 6, nothing appears because it is the lesson where you end the fast. From lesson 4 that you started, 2 weeks later, you finish here in lesson 6. In lesson 7, each church should distribute. There it is for you. Below number 7, the Me+1 card. What is that? You will create, Pastor, a small card with the name of your church on one side, like a business card. And on the other side, 5 blank lines. The idea is that each of the 3 or 4 invite 5 non-believers in the future to Jesus. But is this invitation made now? No. Starting from lesson 7, they will begin to pray. So if I have a group of 3 people, believers from your church, who are attending the school, they will pray for 15 non-believers together, dreaming together, misguided. If it's a group of 4 people, we are praying for 20 non-believers. 5 names each of non-believers. Do we know 5 non-believers? Of course, we do. And we will do this, starting from lesson 7, but not only in it. In lessons 7 and 8, as you can see above in the image, prayer for the targets. That's what's appearing there on your slide. You will pray, and have those small groups pray, for the names of the people. In lesson 8, you also see below, establish who will be the leader. The leader in training, which is this LT in the image, the host, the secretary, that's right. It is the students, OT, who will decide who here will be the leader. If I'm here with my group of 3, which of us will be the leader? That's the idea. But there I have a person whom I want to lead. Of course, Pastor, you have influence and can give your opinion in the groups. But the idea is for it to be very organic and for each group to decide it will be at my house or your house. You will be the leader, the first leader. I will be, the others will be leaders in training. And from there, we will start organizing the cells. In the image, you see 3 evangelism lessons. Lessons 9, 10, and 11. And here, you will see then, in lesson 9, organizing the first meeting. Is there already a meeting here? No. Just say, what day will it be? What time? And we defined the house in lesson 8, but we are defining it here. But look, starting from lesson 10, you will see in the image 3 meetings. Lesson 10, 11, and 12. First meeting, only believers. Second meeting, only believers. Third meeting, only believers. What does this mean? Before the cells start inviting people, we will have 3 meetings. from the group of your school of leaders. It means, Pastor, that if your school is on Sunday, you can choose the weekdays that the cells will operate here for our church. They operate every day. But then you adapt to your reality. But the idea is that you then select people. They go to the houses to pray. This small group that has been praying since lesson 7 for their targets will now meet at the house. And if they agreed that the cell will be on Tuesdays at 8 p.m., they go to the house and pray together for these non-believers. I hope this is becoming clear to you. But they will do this for 3 weeks. They will dream together. They will plan the multiplication together, and you will understand this throughout the seminar. But it is a time of fellowship, of strengthening bonds, and of dreaming together with the new cell. After lesson 12, in your image, above it is written the invitation to the non-believers. It means that a group of 3 who have been praying for 15 people since lesson 7 will make 15 invitations. After lesson 12, a group of 4 people is inviting 20 non-believers to the first meeting. And as we enter this block of consolidation and discipleship, here the lesson is continuous content, but there is so much content that we split it into 2. But here we teach how to make a call to a cell group member. You have to listen more than you speak. And in this content, you will learn so much. Why insist so much on evangelism? Because we teach, but people do not practice. So we are going to be practical teach. We are going to teach so many things throughout the lessons. But here, between lessons 12 and 13, you will invite the non-believers. This means that after your lesson 13, between lessons 13 and 14, you will officially start the cell groups. And here's an important note regarding non-believers. It's a secret that I will reaffirm a few times, but a cell group starts with non-believers. It also means that in lesson 14, you will have testimonies of how the first cell groups in the history of your church went, at least in this simple and cool model. Well, this material will work for the first group, and you will end with open cell groups. It also works for the second group. After all, the second group consists of people from your church who were not part of the first, but who will now be invited to the second. There will come a point in the third or fourth group where you no longer need to start cell groups from scratch, as you have already implemented the model. And now those coming to be students are the people you will win for Jesus, who will be going through a baptism process and now arriving at the school. And that's why I just want to quickly show you this second image here. Take a look at it. You are seeing more or less the same image as the last one, but it is much cleaner with less information. This means that the 14 classes will operate for a few years in your church, even after implementation. But now, you no longer need to start a cell group from scratch, so there is no more division into groups of 3 or 4 or things like that. What I want to reaffirm is that this school will operate for a few years. The step-by-step guide exists in the format of opening the cell groups, and there is a second step-by-step guide in the material for those who already have cell groups and now just want to train new leaders. This school has a beginning, middle, and end, and is equipped to train leaders. I want to reaffirm to you, between lessons 10, 11, and 12, 3 meetings are for believers only. Official start of the cell groups by inviting non-believers after lesson 13. And the biggest secret I want to share with you about starting cell groups
is the fact that cell groups begin with non-believers. Pastor, look closely at me. You are not going to just start assigning people. Oh, but they're believers. They want to join the cell group. We're opening a cell group and everyone wants to come. That is not the process. The correct process is to start with non-believers. Our 45 started their cell groups by inviting non-believers. And the rest of the church began to say, Pastor Paulo, can I go to the cell group? And the answer is not no. It's a conditional, yes. You can join the cell group soon, but first you have to go to the School of Leaders. You open the second class, and from that second class, new cell groups will be started. But of course, you can also use 1 or 2 or 3 brothers to strengthen the cell groups that have already started. After all, some will grow faster than others. Throughout this seminar, you will understand better how the multiplication process works. There are other videos with activities, and you will understand it well. But what needs to be clear is how to start a cell group. A cell group starts with non-believers. It's 3 or 4 believers reaching out to non-believers. That's where we started, and that's how we achieved success here in our church. And don't forget, if we're talking about leadership and the development of leaders, the cell group is the ideal environment. For developing leaders, leaders will practice in the cell groups and will learn in the school. What Pastor Anna has already said so well, I want to reaffirm for you. The cell group is not just theory when it comes to the school of leaders and cell groups. It is also practice, and we live this out every week. In the last kit promised here, at the opening of the cell groups, we give you extra material with a lecture called Cell Group Experience.
We also have plenty of cell group lessons. From years of experience here at Central, we have cards to delegate functions, control reports, a cell group leader's guide, and so many things for you to dive into the material. But here I taught many things. It's 3 steps at once. But don't lose focus here. Before the school starts, a filter, meetings with the leadership, with a selected group, a clear school, and I hope it has become very clear to you how to open cells. If you have doubts, look at the step-by-step guide. It will teach you in detail how to do it. And of course, our team will continue with you on this journey. 3 steps that cannot be skipped. This is how the cell starts. And the cell starts with a small group of believers, trained, winning over non-believers. Others will come for the other groups. And I believe your church will never stop growing. Amen? Well, now, I want to invite you to continue in the seminar. After all, we taught 3 steps before. In DNA, I 3 as well. So up to now, 6 steps. In total, there are 8. And right after, you will have the 7th step. The cells have opened. What to do now? You need to supervise them very well. Here comes another pillar of the cell church. It is supervision, and I hope that God speaks greatly to your heart. God bless you